Information technology is not a science meant for rocket scientists. It's a science meant for the average person, and it empowers him to change his life, his career, his potentials, and the respect he gets from society. Welcome to your program Tech Africa, right here on your station, where we look at issues, trends, developments in the global ICT industry. Today we have all our regular segments featuring. Stay with us.
And the winner is...
This is not a phone. It's a super camera phone. Its superpower? A super sensing Leica quad camera. Now you can find light in the dark with the super spectrum camera sensor. It absorbs light in a revolutionary way. This pioneering periscope structure gives you a super zoom that brings you closer to the things you love. Plus, add extra depth to your bokeh shots and capture beauty in every layer. With Super AI HDR, get the best of every layer, even in the most complex environments. Welcome to the beginning of a new era. Rewrite the rules of photography with the Huawei P30 series.
And just in case you've just tuned in, you're all watching Africa's numero uno tech show on television. Coming up now is our tech personality of the week. And today, we give you the concluding path of that classic interview we had with the Chief Executive Officer of RAC Center, Mr. Tunde Koka.
If you sit before the President of Nigeria and he asks you this question, what's your dream tech ecosystem for Nigeria to drive a digital Nigeria? What would you answer me?
That's a great question. There are multiple dimensions. I mean, of course, I've talked about the information security. And, of course, you also have that good old cliche enabling environment. So people say, so what does an enabling environment mean? Okay. So in a whole tech ecosystem, a lot of the infrastructure we use actually has to be put in place and we have to be for, say, data centers or interconnectivity and so on, right? We have to be competitive globally, okay? And the tech ecosystem is such that, you know, we can't manufacture all of this stuff, very, very high technology things that we have to host Nigeria's data in Nigeria to the highest quality, okay? So if one of my competitors was setting up in the UK, right, probably has access to a whole range of technology sources where they're not paying customs duty across Europe, and in some negotiated customs relationships perhaps with the US and so on, so they don't pay customs duties, but they're paying a small amount of customs duty. Now, we want to underpin our technology here, and you suddenly immediately have customs duty of 15, 20, 25, depending on what aspect of it. Your capital investment is now already uncompetitive by that amount, immediately. And people will say, well, I want the services I get in Nigeria to cost exactly the same as if I hosted it abroad. There are two things. One, we're either going to be price uncompetitive, or two, we take a margin haircut. Now, it's important that we make fair margins on our investments. Not because someone in the private sector is going to go around and be so rich and stuff like that. No. The fact is that you have to pay off your investments, and you have to reinvest into the scale of the future. And if you don't get returns on that investment, you won't be able to do that. And if you can't do fundamental things like that, you cannot grow the fundamentals of the technology base in infrastructure. So we have to look at something like that. You know, we talk about, for instance, you have pioneer status and so on. You know, pioneer status is one thing, but if your access to funds are also very, very difficult to come by because of the cost of funds here, or because the country risk is high, and therefore you've got to work really, really hard to get funds that are actually not competitive, immediately, once again, you erode your cost base. You know, all I need is to have a government context that sets the right risk profile for the country, okay, so that our sources of funds internationally, it's also really, whether you go to a local bank or whatever, they have to get their money from somewhere. It's a global ecosystem for getting money. So the more efficiently you can get that money, the more efficiently we can invest in underlying technology infrastructure. That is something I would also put in, just request. What else would I request in this enabling environment? Do you know, we know, everybody mentions it, that broadband access gives, you know, is it 10% broadband access adds 1% to GDP. But that's in more advanced countries. In emerging economies, it's actually around about 2.5%, right? Depending on what kind of economy, how advanced you are in the sort of maturity of broadband penetration. So for us, actually, it's probably be around about 2%, okay? Because averages are a funny thing. They give you the top and the bottom, and it's like, no, we'll probably be around about 1.5, 2% addition to GDP. But nevertheless, when you speak to the carriers, you find some states still want to charge right away. And now we're talking about some breakthroughs. If you talk to ATCON, the Association of Telecoms Companies of Nigeria, that's another, you know, agency, for instance, and Alton, the Association of Licensed Telecom Operators, you know, they work assiduously to create the right, to engage with government and the operators and so on, to create the right content. They say, hey, we've made some good changes, we've got standardized right away, but you know, I would actually educate the governors of states to tell them, you ought to be giving incentives to these companies to come and fiber your state, because penetration of fiber gives telecoms, reliable telecoms outreach to your people wherever they are. It brings in industry. That 1.5% increase in GDP I talked about, the state's own GDP would increase significantly because fiber is there. But the governors will think about my 4 years in office and how much can I get out of charging right of way, which is really quite myopic, actually. It's short-sighted. You need to think strategically about the good of the state. Therefore, right of way should be a thing of the past. In fact, any state should be thinking, right of way? Are you trying to kill my state? Encourage everybody to implement infrastructure. Now, if you get underlying infrastructure right, there are many other things that will then work. You can't have tech hubs, co-creation hubs, for instance, technology villages, all nice things to say without an underlying infrastructure. And they won't be feasible if that infrastructure isn't at the right price. Yaba Tech has been a great the technology environment there, ecosystem, but it took a company like Me1 to say, hey, look, we're going to be proactive, we're going to get some fiber to these people, we're going to really get that moving. So it's there. So it's the leadership context that we, not government generally, right? And usually the best way to drive behavior, okay, it's not, oh, government must do it. Is that government should drive the right behavior with aspects of taxation, incentives, and so on, that encourages these ecosystems to be set up. So when you invest in them, you actually get, the government doesn't have to pay for it. I talked about the context that has to be put in place. But when you invest in them, you actually get some, say, tax credits over time. Okay, and business is business environments will get return on investment. If we get that kind of environment right, then we will really unleash and take that to a different level, what we're doing with the raw talent we have right now. There are two sides to that raw talent. One, we have the young people who just will, we have the internet now. It comes back to broadband access. You can't access the internet to really learn at high speed if you don't have the broadband access. But we have the raw material that want to access the internet, and they'll learn so quickly. We're innovating like hell. If you look at the way even our people who are here, not just people in diaspora, are regarded internationally. That's one. However, even the users of the information, our average median age is young. In Africa, but even in Nigeria, it's very young. And these are the ages and the millennials and so on that just live on data and they consume data. So on the creative part, we've got the talent. On the usage part and the marketplace, we've got the right demographics. So it's not just one thing, I would say, to Mr. President, right? But there's a whole range of things that we have to look at. That is a whole sort of value chain of transforming our IT ecosystem here.
Are you satisfied with the level of youth inclusion in governance and leadership in Nigeria?
You're asking me some profound questions. Am I satisfied? I'll try and answer it in this way. That there's something that's been happening in the country which really is democracy, right? And I do believe that we continue to make progress in democracy. And it's something that we have to hold dear. Do you know the involvement of the youth now is, their involvement in government is to go and vote. Their involvement in government is to be interested in what matters. Their involvement in government is to make sure that in getting that interest and they go to vote, they get the leaders that we get the leaders that we deserve, right? So if you look at how democracy is improving, shifting, if you look at the state governor elections, you have the states that have been transforming their states. They're increasing levels of IGR. You see in the states, they're starting to invest in their own. The best states just get on with it. The worst performing states will just wait for IGR and for FAC to come and spend it and think about minimum wage as, when my FAC comes, it won't reach, rather than how do you generate commerce based on minerals. Every state has a different type of mineral. So when you see the states hanging out together, you see some the governors of states that are performing have a certain way, and you'll see them. If you see them interacting, you see it. Okay, and then the people start to see these other states that are actually progressing, they're growing, that people are enjoying a level of prosperity. Okay, so they want their own state to be like that. The way to do it is the ballot box. When people go to become, say, governors of states, and they know if they don't deliver, they'll be voted out, suddenly they start asking businesses and everybody the questions. Come and help me figure out what I need to do to deliver. Come and help me execute. And then they're passionate, you see, about execution within the time scale they've got to show that they're delivering, so that they get voted back to continue to deliver. That's why it's democracy that's going to transform this. So when you ask me the question, are the youth participating enough? Well, it's if they vote, then that's their participation. If you want and
voting is not enough.
Yes, it is. Because what are you going to do? You vote in the leader. If the leader for what you're going to do is a 30-year-old, highly dynamic, well-informed, person who's in tune with what and they have the right maturity to take the role. They have the right exposure, right? Age doesn't necessarily mean maturity. Age, in my view, is just an indication of the likelihood of you having a level of maturity. Okay, exposure and a whole range of things. So if that's this 30-year-old or 35 or whatever is going to be the person that is in tune with you as a youth, then go get them and vote them in, right? You can, if okay, don't have the money for elections, use new innovative ways of crowdfunding and all of those things. And you're starting to see in elections now a lot more with the use of social media, interconnected networks to reach out to people, to tell a story that gets people engaged to come and vote for you. So that's why my thesis is that it comes down, do you want to be involved? Go and vote. That's it. And then hold the person you voted in into account to deliver to you. Whether you want to be a farmer, whether you want to be in IT, whether you're in doing some mineral stuff or whatever, get involved. Get involved in the chambers of commerce that you're in. Get involved in understanding what the key issues are. Get involved in when it comes to election. You know the whole old saying that if you want to go fast, go alone, right? If you want to go far, go together. The way you go far in a sustainable way, in my own view, it really comes down to democracy. And it's great when we continue to see, we can talk about issues. If you want me to just talk about issues with the democracy and stuff like that, we could have a good discussion about it. But if we have a positive discussion, we can also have a positive discussion about the progress we've been making. I've been here experiencing it, as I've said, over the last 10 years. And previously I experienced it from afar, but I've been living here now for the last 10 years, seeing the shifts, some mistakes we make, some progress we make. And when you make progress, it's not just a straight line up. As long as the trend of the graph is up, you have ups and downs and ups and downs and ups and downs and ups and downs. I think our democracy trajectory is by and large on the up. That is what the youth have the power to do through the ballot box.
Do you think we are ready for e-voting? Do we have the infrastructure, the systems in place for the kind of e-voting the type we see in the US and the UK and in France? Are we ready? If we are ready or we're not ready, but what do you think are the panacea for someone?
Okay, so I think we should have electronic voting, and to have the right types of biometrics in place that will actually enable the electronic voting. So there's another chain here. You're right, infrastructure has to be in place. So by and large, if you go around the whole country, you can use your mobile phone. It just happens that in some places it's 2G and only voice you can use, and very, very, very little bits of data. If you look at India and the amazing progress they made in 4G, it wasn't government that did it, but government set the context That meant that all of these masts that are all over the place right now and so on, you move them to the next level. We don't need 4G at the outer points to have electronic voting. The amount of data that goes to move through in the validation process is not actually huge. You could do that with, say, 3.5G, for instance. You don't need 4G, LTE, 5G, and all of that. That's if you want to watch video stream on demand and so on. Those things are really, for now, only really very relevant in places like Lagos and built-up areas and so on. So fundamental infrastructure, we can push it out very, very quickly within one cycle of government. If you push at it now with the right level of determination, in a couple of years, you'll get it there. In parallel, you start looking at the right kind of biometrics. The fundamental biometric is the fingerprint, but you also have others like finger vein that can complement it to allow you to get more reliable, quick voting. So there are technologies, and they're being looked at actually right now. Okay, the thing is the determination to make sure it's actually put in place. You know, in Africa, we've shown a lot of ability to leapfrog the world and to show a different standard to the world on how we use technology. Telephony has been an amazing success where people thought, oh, Africa, people can't afford phones. Well, see what's happened. So electronic voting is also the opportunity to ensure that we take democracy to a different level. One panacea? I don't think it's one panacea. Actually, if there's one panacea, it's a determination to do it. And understanding the bits you need to put in place, then set the right context for infrastructure to be extended out there. You need legislation with some of these things as well. But if you look at the whole of Africa, do you know the data center capacity in just Amsterdam, right, is twice what we have in the whole of Africa. 1.2 billion people, or 1.3 billion people now. Yes? Okay. It's 4 times that in London. So quite clearly, the potential scale in Africa is huge. We say, okay, so many potential opportunities that we don't realize in the country. I think this is one where the dynamics actually show that we will realize it. Just one statistic. I was listening to the DG for the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics talking about oil industry. It's a significant industry for our economy, and some key decisions have to be made in that industry that drive its own ecosystem that supports other industries like IT and agriculture and so on. Oil is about 8% of GDP or 7% or something like that. But it affects 60% of the economy, was what he said, because of it's the source of foreign exchange and so on. So I thought, okay, so ICT, which is dominated by communications right now, right? Telecommunications is 12.8% of GDP, but it actually probably impacts about 90% of the economy, because technology enables everything. So if you have unreliable technology infrastructure, then you have an unreliable economy, 90% of it. That's my own view. It's an opinion. It's on anecdotal evidence, but I would assert that that's highly probable, right? And it'll be interesting to see whether the NBS will then validate that. But we have to make sure that the bodies we have, Alton, ATCON, you've got NIDA within the government, we play our role in getting it clear to the layers of government what the critical success factors are for us. However, it actually is only down to everybody in the industry to make it happen. And so I would say not sort of give up hope, but we have to, and we also have to strive to achieve a significant amount of innovation to get across some of the challenges we have, also with a significant amount of determination.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much. Great questions.
Thank you.
Wow, what a great time there with Mr. Tunde Koka, Chief Executive Officer of RAC Center. I'm afraid that's our time will allow us this week on this highly informative and educative package. You can reach us on the numbers and emails now showing on your screen. And just in case you missed the first part of this interview, you can see it on our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to it as well. And of course, you can also share to other industry stakeholders. On behalf of the production crew, thanks for watching. Same time, same station, I'll be here. I'm Don Pedro Agambi, signing out.
And the winner is